शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षातात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday Atma Vicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham and meditate upon it by his abundant grace. We have been reading Bhagavan's Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, and the compilation has been done by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajan ji. And we have been looking at the question answers put to Bhagavan between 1936 to 1950, and we have come to the 61st question in the book. After reading Bhagavan's Upadesham for the day and meditating upon it by his grace, then we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Following that, our President Sarada would be talking about self-enquiry as it has been contemplated in the book Ramana Gita. It is a compilation of Bhagavan's answers on self-enquiry to many devotees in Sanskrit by Ganapati Muni. And after that, as a concluding, we'll offer prayers to Bhagavan. Today's question, the devotee is asking, how is the mind to be controlled? The question is, how is the mind to be controlled? Bhagavan says, show me the mind and then you will know what to do. The fact is that the mind is only a bundle of thoughts. How can you extinguish it? By the thought of doing so or by a desire. Your thoughts and desire are part and parcel of the mind. The mind is simply patterned by new thoughts rising up. Therefore, it is foolish to attempt to kill the mind by means of the mind. The only way of doing it is to find its source and hold on to it. The mind will then fade away its own Yoga teaches control of the activities of the mind, but I say self enquiry. This is the practice, this is the practical way. Control of the mind is brought about in sleep, swoon, or by starvation. As soon as the cause is withdrawn, thoughts rise again. Of what use and no misery, but misery recurs when the stupor is removed. So control is useful and cannot be of lasting benefits. Bhagavan here very clearly brings out that the fallacy that most of the sadhakas that we are fall into. We practice some yoga or some meditation or chanting or any of these methods, and what we see is the running mind is largely slowed down, and therefore there is a lot of peace that we experience, and therefore we believe the control of the mind is the remedy. But Bhagavan here, Bhagavan's teaching is very clear that there is something beyond the mind, to whom the mind also appears as an object. And if we were to abide in that, which is what is also available, but instead of attending to that which to which the mind also appears as an object, we seem to give a lot of reality to mind and controlling of the mind. So he brings out clearly that why make that attempt if there is something to which the mind is only an object and it transcends the mind here and now. Why not attend to that? Why do we need to attend to the mind and try to control? And Bhagavan says, mind is nothing but a bundle of thoughts. So its nature is to have one thought of the other. And why do we need to control it? Because it is not going to give any lasting benefits. It may be controlled, like in sleep or in swoon, or when we become sort of unconscious. But what we have to recognize from that experience of sleep or swoon or unconscious is that the mind is not existent there, like in sleep or swoon. Therefore, the mind that we are experiencing in the waking is only present because of our attention to it. And secondly, the mind is also not being real when we because of which we see that it is its absence in sleep. So the way in the waking state too, there is this possibility of not having the mind. The not having the mind is like not giving it the reality, or it dissolves, says Bhagavan here. All the attempts to kill the mind by another idea or thoughts or desire is all like holding on to the uh, thought to kill another thought. And therefore, Bhagavan says it only fattens the mind. This we have to recognize. All we need to do is recognize there is something to which the present running mind is an object. And if we can only turn and abide in that as it is, here and now, Bhagavan says the mind will not only slow down, it will be completely dissolved in that higher truth. And that truly is the remedy for the killing of the mind. It is not the control of the mind which is the remedy. It is the killing of the mind which is the remedy. And the killing of the mind doesn't occur by any other thoughts, that means with any other desires or concepts or thoughts. All of that, Bhagavan again says we have to become vigilant and clear that that is holding on to the mind to remove the mind, and that is not going to work out. We should see the fallacy of that approach. Rather, we should see that even now, the slowing of the mind or the running of the mind or thought free of the mind, thought state of the mind is all something visible to something within us here and now. If there is a thought, we are aware of it. If there is an absence of a thought, we are aware of it. So the awareness here and now has already transcended the mind. And therefore, Bhagavan says, why try to deal with the mind, rather, which only dissolves in that awareness in sleep or something, even though unconsciously? Why not consciously remain as that awareness and let the mind get completely dissolved and let that awareness alone shine here and now? And by doing so, Bhagavan says that the mind is eliminated, killed forever. And therefore, there is no need to control. And Bhagavan says that all other paths may still use the mind to control the mind. And therefore, his recommendation is self-enquiry, the real investigation. Because by investigation, we see that the divine or the natural state of all of us is that there is an higher awareness to whom even this mind appears and disappears. And therefore, if we can remain in that state, therefore, we need not have to deal with the control of the mind. But on the contrary, if we use the mind to control through yoga or other sadhana, we may seem to get control, but then again the control may be lost. It's like I decide to ride a bike and I say, okay, if I can control the accelerator of the bike, then I will be able to ride it comfortably. But moment I decide to ride the bike and control the accelerator, one thing I have unconsciously recognized is I am going to get into the roads and the traffics. Therefore, I don't have much control there in the traffic. There, anything can come suddenly. A cow or a person or a slow moving vehicle can come. That vehicle doesn't know that you have decided to ride in some constant speed. It comes as it has to come, and therefore you have to either speed up or speed down the vehicle, and therefore you end up having lot of disturbance. In the sense, when we think that there is mind and then there is that we should control and we will be able to control by certain practices, unknowingly, like the bike has entered the road where there are many other vehicles, we have entered the world of duality. And therefore, there are many things that we really don't have control over. And therefore, the mind may get agitated here. The mind may find many unpleasant circumstances here. It may have to run fast sometimes. run quick, slow sometimes. Sometimes it may have to do many circuses to go through these dualities, which are very uncomforting for it. So Bhagavan is saying, why ride that mind when there is an awareness which is here and now, transcendental of that mind, where there is nowhere to go, nothing to be achieved, because it is consciousness or awareness plus thoughts, we call it as mind. It is awareness plus body, we, we call, and its movement we call as doing. It is awareness plus the objects that we call the world. Why attend to thoughts, to the movements, to the objects, when the substratum is the consciousness or the awareness? Why not just continuously attend to it? Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram. There is only the substratum. Why not attend to it? Why attend to those things which come and go, which are only seemingly appearing and disappearing, in that one awareness, which alone is, which here and now stands transcendental of all the appearing and disappearing? Why not experience that, in which everything can fade away? Kabalita Ghana Vishwarupa, the entire Vishwarupa, if we can stay in the transcendental truth of ours, just fades away, even though this world looks so gross and real. It is all absorbed like in the sleep or swoon, only that it is done consciously and not unconsciously. And to do that consciously, we have to do the conscious enquiry. And the conscious enquiry is nothing but self enquiry, which makes us question everything, not take anything for granted. And by questioning and repeatedly diving and inquiring, we realize that here and now the truth stands transcendental, and it is my own negligence to it and attending to the one which keeps on fleeting, like the thoughts, the movements, and the objects, which makes me suffer. If I were to let go all of it and abide in my natural state of being consciousness here and now, all of these objects and world which I cannot transcend by holding on to any lofty ideas or concepts or doing, will automatically and easily fade away, like, a smoke fading away in the air, never to be found out. Likewise, this entire gross objects and all the gross in subtle objects like the thoughts fade away in that pure consciousness, not to be found out. And to make experience, Bhagavan has given us any thought, because any gross appearance first appears in the form of a subtle thought. And therefore, he asks us to inquire every rising thought, no matter whatever the thought is, whether it is good, bad, ugly, or even spiritual. And by questioning to whom is this thought, we see the idea of an individual, the first and the foremost division, has already arisen. So when we say to whom is this thought, the answer is it is for me. So that division, which is an imaginary division, which is giving reality to the idea I am this body, is further questioned by inquiring, who am I? What do I refer to as I within me? or where from this thought I is rising. And when we trace it back to the source, we see that we have we reach that one awareness, one consciousness that we are, wherein everything there is no division, and by repeatedly abiding in that state, as Bhagavan says here, the mind will fade away, only leaving that pure I. The immense grace of Bhagavan for the next 20 minutes. Let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramaya. Namo Ramana. Over to Sharda. Namo Ramanaka. Namo Ramana. Looks like Kaya is not logged in. Revati, can you check with Akka, please? I'll be reading the next question and answers until Akka joins. Question number 62 is devotee. What is the
Hello?
Namaramna Akka?
I didn't hear you actually.
Oh, is
I
it?
didn't hear the Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Sorry, Akka.
I don't
Sorry.
know, maybe I should exit and come again. I'm not hearing you properly. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, you are very audible to me.
I'm audible, is it? Okay, let me just. Yeah, I think my speaker is. Okay, okay. Sorry about that. Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we are meditating in this segment of the satsang on verses from Ramana Gita, and we are on the seventh chapter, which is directly the chapter on self enquiry. And having told us what is the definition of self enquiry, what exactly is self enquiry, Bhagavan has then gone on to answer Karshni and give the criteria for self enquiry, which he said is to have detachment from the body idea and to have distaste for objective experiences, for sense experiences. This is what Bhagavan told us, that this is the criteria for self inquiry. So then he has said, Dehe chantyata buddhihi tam prahur adhikaranam. Dehe nashvarata buddhair vairagyad vishayeshu cha etabhyameva lingabhyam ज्ञेया स्वस्याधिकारिता. So the person will know about self-inquiry. The one's own fitness for self-inquiry will be known by, he says, Bhagavan says, by understanding that one is not interested in anything else. When one becomes disinterested in other things, of course, Bhagavan found himself disinterested in everything after the Atmanubhava, because of which Vishwanatha Swami has given him the name in Ramana Ashtotram, Udasinaya Namaha. There would be a difference we see between an indifference which comes out of a mental preparation or a mental longing for self knowledge and an indifference that would come when one is actually abiding in the self. So we find that Bhagavan is Udasina. He absolutely has no concern about the body. And he says that having attachment to the body, which means actually having attachment to the body idea, it doesn't mean that one has to give up any of the normal life habits that we have. It doesn't mean that one has to be consciously renouncing any of these things, because that would still be a body idea. Actually, in the other satsang also, we meditated on the story from Yoga Vashishta, where Chudala tells Shikidvaja, it is not about renouncing the kingdom, it is not about renouncing your comforts and taking up all kinds of austerities. What you need to do is to give up the body idea. So, if this is a prerequisite, we also saw, is it possible? We saw Annamalai Swami's suggestion that through the practice of self inquiry itself, such Viveka and Vairagya can be built up. This is, in fact, the experience of anyone who does self inquiry. It is obvious to them that vichara leads to vairagya more than any other practice. We may think I should be detached from this, I should not get angry, I should not think of myself as a body. But in all this, Bhagavan says it is like a thief turned policeman. It is like a thief who says that he himself says, oh, I should take hold of the thief. Because who is saying that we should have vairagya? The ego itself, the I thought itself is saying it. So the best way to tackle it, the best way to really develop dispassion is to ask ourselves, who am I? When we ask ourselves, who am I? It also comes, actually, one realizes that one is not this body. When we listen to Bhagavan's teachings, we understand that this body cannot be I. When we look at Bhagavan's life, we understand that body cannot be I. And when we look at our own life, Bhagavan's life, because when his father passed away, Bhagavan was 12 years old. So he recognized that the body cannot be the father. Seeing the dead father's dead body, he actually, as a young boy of 12, he realized this body cannot be my father. Because if this body was my father, which it appears to be just as if it is asleep, but they have taken it to the cremation ground, they have burnt it and reduced it to ashes. All the people who were so attached to my father, who loved my father so much, would they have burnt this body if it was my father? And if it was my father, would not that body have objected, saying, don't take me to the crematorium? Would it not have said, That I can, how could it withstand the burning? How can it keep quiet when it's burnt and reduced to ashes? So Bhagavan says, I realized that my father's I had left the body, meaning to say that the body was not my father, which means it was never my father. And he says, I also realized that my I is still within my body. So the recognition that the body is not I. And Bhagavan says we don't have to go so far till the point of death. We can just see our own daily lives. We can see that we fall asleep, go into the dream, and the waking body is not there. Then we go into deep sleep and no body is there. If we look at our lives past and present, if we look at what all this body has gone through from the life in the womb till now, which body can we call I? So when we look at all this, what happens is we do get a degree of dispassion. We do get a degree of understanding that the body cannot be I. The need to fulfill the bodily desires may come down. But Bhagavan has said this is a prerequisite for self inquiry. Why? Or he may say, this is the previous step of self inquiry. Because the moment one understands intellectually that the body is not I, what is the next step? The next step has to be, who am I? Because that intellectual understanding alone is not enough. Even in Bhagwan's life, the completion came when he did his own inquiry, when he inquired into the nature of his self, when he held his breath, when he made the body as good as dead, and then asked himself, who am I, with that intensity. That is when the knowledge dawned, the fullness of knowledge dawned. What happened when Sundaramayyar passed away, when his father passed away, was an intellectual awareness. This body cannot be I. But that did not make his life different in any way. It is only Atmanubhava which can make the life different. So, it is not an end in itself. Dispassion is not an end in itself, but it is surely a great support for Atma Vichara, because every time a thought arises, every time a need arises, every time a sorrow arises, every time anger arises, every time desire arises, this concept would come back to us, the supportive concept. I'm not this body, isn't it? If I'm not this body, if I'm not Sharada, why am I busy pursuing these thoughts? So that is a great support in quietening the mind. And once the mind is quiet, what should we do with it? In Upadeshasaram also, Bhagavan says, if we have quietened the mind through breath control, we cannot stop there. So if we have quietened the mind through dispassion, if the mind is ready to dive within through dispassion, that only shows the readiness. So one has to complete the task, one has to dive in after that. So, what Bhagavan has given here is the supports to self inquiry. Without supports, also we can do self inquiry, or we can, once we do self inquiry, the support comes automatically. So, that does not matter. So, we need not worry too much. Very often people would quote to me this the Bhagavad Gita verse wherein Sri Krishna says that it is only one in a million who can get Atma Jnana. Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate, and it takes so many lifetimes, and it is only one in a million who can get Samahatma Sudurlabaha. It is very difficult to get such a one. Okay, so it is not for me. Maybe I will get it in my next birth. Maybe I will get it after 10 births. Such thoughts are entertained by people. I have heard people speaking such feelings, giving expressions to such feelings. But I would always ask them, how do you know that you are not that one in a million. How do I know that I am not that one in a million? I may be, because we have all come to Bhagavan, we have all come to self inquiry. So these verses are not meant. Why I am saying this is, these verses are not meant for us to judge ourselves negatively and say, I am not ready. Because that is what Sundareshayar did. T.K. Sundareshayar did that. He said, I am not ready. He who from the age of 19 was going up to Bhagavan every day, he who could not afford sometimes to take even a piece of sugar candy to Bhagavan, and then he would say, Bhagavan, today I have not brought anything. He would feel sad, and Bhagavan would say, no, you have brought the most important thing. And what is that, Bhagavan? If he asks, he says, you have brought yourself. To such a one to whom Bhagavan said, you brought the most important thing, which is yourself, he did not take himself to Bhagavan for 100 days. 100 days he kept himself away from Bhagavan, thinking, I am not ready. So if I think I am not ready and I do not do self-enquiry and I think I must get ready for self-enquiry, it is like Sundareshayar. That's why these great ones do all these things to make us aware, keeping himself away from the Paramatirtha Bhagavan. So what can be more purifying than trying to dip into the self, than doing self-enquiry itself? What can give us more dispassion than doing self-enquiry itself? So sometimes it's like a vicious cycle, but we should hold on to self inquiry, and we can also try to build the supportive mood of dispassion. So ultimately, of course, Sundareshayar realized his error and he went and fell at Bhagwan's feet, and Bhagwan lifted him up with great love. He was waiting at the Skandashram gate for Sundareshayar. And after Sundareshayar had bathed his feet with his tears, Bhagavan lifted him up and said, why Sundareshayar? So many people whom Bhagavan would address in singular with the name is what we hear. And Sundaresha told him, I made this great error of thinking that I was not benefiting from coming here. So Bhagavan said, so what? You felt the difference, isn't it? So what whether you benefit or not? So what whether you benefit or not? And Sundareshayar then says, I realized that we do not go to Bhagavan for profit. It does not matter. Profit or loss do not matter. But we go to Bhagavan because there is no life without Him. The same with the self, same with Atma Vichara. We have to get back to the self, not because of the advantages of self knowledge. We have to get back to the self because that is life. That alone is life. That alone is the truth. That alone is beauty. That alone is love. That alone is peace. And it is available to us. So, Bhagavan's great grace is just indicating over here, he's suggesting we can try to bring in some discipline. We can try to turn the mind away. As is said in Bhagavad Gita, you see, he says, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, wherever the mind goes, bring it back. Atmanyeva Vasham Nayet. Bring it back into the control of the self. Bring it back into the realm of the self. Let it hold the self. Let the self hold it, the mind, the wandering mind. So, to tell us how important it is, and to tell us also how meaningless is this attachment. That's why he says, he talks about distaste for the bodily experiences, for the sense objects and the sense experiences, to show that they are utterly meaningless. Otherwise, why would Bhagavan ask us to be indifferent to them? So, to reveal their meaninglessness and to reveal the beauty of inquiry, he has given this condition, and not because he will deny us anything despite our weakness. He will bestow the strength also. Sadhanai balam tanalipadum, says Sadhuam Swami. So He will give us the strength. If we do not have it, then let us turn to Him. Let us turn to Him and ask in His own words, Dheeramillahattil Tedi Undanayan Tirumba Utrain Arul. I don't have the strength to let go. I don't have the courage to let go. So you help me. If that is the prerequisite, then make me ready. Then you should make me ready and then help me to tread the path of self inquiry. That is our prayer to Him. And that is, of course, His task, which He is ever doing. If He makes us pray that way, it is also to reveal to us what He's actually doing. Only our prayer makes us conscious of His task. That's why He makes us conscious of our weakness, His strength, and then allows us to understand that His strength is overwhelming. It overwhelms every weakness and every sorrow and is ever blissful and gracious. Om Namo Bhagavate Shivaya.
अपार सच्चित सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि नमो Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana Dileep, thank you.